As we wrap up our third annual GW Business and Policy Forum, I want to thank our speakers, our sponsors, and everyone in attendance for making these past 2 days so memorable. During the forum, we've heard important perspectives on how technology is reshaping the way we work and lead. From workplace shifts to sustainability, to ideas on social impact and leadership from the C-suite, everything we've discussed has pointed to a clear message. The future of work isn't just on the horizon. The future of work is now. That's why it feels right to close with someone who has spent his entire career leading at the intersection of business and technology. It's my pleasure to introduce our final speaker, Dr. Helmuth Ludwig. Dr. Ludwig is a professor of practice for strategy and entrepreneurship at SMU's Cox School of Business in Dallas, Texas, where he teaches courses on technology and AI strategy. He also leads the Hart Institute for Technology, Innovation, and Entrepreneurship, and holds research roles in Spain and Switzerland. Before joining academia, he spent nearly 30 years at Siemens in international leadership roles, finishing as Global CIO in 2019. After serving as CEO of Siemens Industry Sector North America and president of Siemens PLM Software. He now serves on several corporate boards, including Hitachi and Humanetics Group, and advises companies on innovation, cybersecurity, and governance. He has co-authored works on AI and cybersecurity, such as How Siemens Democratized Artificial Intelligence, How Boards of Directors Govern Artificial Intelligence, and the 2023 book, Cybersecurity, 7 Steps for Boards of Directors. Dr. Ludwig will close out this year's forum with his insights to include democratization of artificial intelligence and AI's impact on the boards of directors. Dr. Ludwig will also reflect on the topics explored throughout the forum and help us consider what's next for the future of work. Now, after his remarks, I invite everyone to continue the conversation at the networking reception in the University Center, which is directly across 21st Street from us, on the 3rd floor in the Grand Ballroom. But the doors will not open until after our last speaker, so please don't leave. Let's give our closing speaker, Dr. Helmuth Ludwig, a warm welcome.
Thank you very much. Well, that's really a tough one now. So first of all, to all the survivors here, congratulations. 4 hours in a row without a real break. That's impressive. And it's my special pleasure to be the last step before we go for drinks. And I promise I will not overrun. Well, never promise these things, but I will try. It's really fascinating, yesterday already in the student discussion and today to listen to all these very accomplished speakers and their thoughts about AI. And I thought I use a picture here with that. I think we have uploaded the wrong presentation. Or not? Quick question, what does it mean? What does it have to do with what we're doing here? We are so far from surfing here today in this little cold environment. So why this here? Any thoughts? Because we can't change the wave, but we can learn how to surf. Now I have one question to you. We spoke so much about AI, and right now, you know, you announce a conference, and you think about the title, and then 2 minutes before you announce it, you put some AI in there, and people coming in is double. So are we already overhyped? Or is it actually underhyped? Quick audience participation. Who says, look, this AI topic is important, but it's now really overhyped? Okay, who says it's underhyped? Okay, and who hasn't made a decision? Let's try this again. Who said? No. Anyway, so I wanted to share with you some gentleman here who has a strong opinion about
AI
this.
is underhyped. Why is that?
And I'll tell you why. Most of you think of AI as, I'll just use the general term as ChatGPT. For most of you, ChatGPT was the moment where you said, oh my God, this thing writes, and it makes mistakes, but it's so brilliantly verbal. Right, that was certainly my reaction. Most people that I knew did that.
It was visceral, yeah.
This was 2 years ago. Since then, the gains in what is called reinforcement learning, which is what AlphaGo helped invent and so forth, allow us to do planning. And a good example is look at OpenAI O3 or DeepSeek R1, and you can see how it goes forward and back, forward and back, forward and back. It's extraordinary.
It's extraordinary. That's where he stops. By the way, if you have time and haven't listened to this yet, it's the 14-minute TED Talk with Eric Schmidt. He's fascinating, and I strongly recommend it. What I would like to do now is to take a quick look, overhyped, underhyped, in 3 areas. Number 1 is education. We're here at a university, and the key question is there, are we ready for it? Are we preparing the next generation for what's coming around the corner? And what do we do as faculty, and what do we do as sitting on the other side, where we all were some years ago? The second part is, what does it really mean for business? And we talked about this, and we heard it today. If you know something about AI, you have already a starting advantage in your interview when you join a new company. And we also heard that many are experimenting, but maybe have some challenge with scaling. So let's take a quick look at this. And last but not least, talking about governance and how do board of directors actually hopefully positively influence the direction of the company, and then some final personal remarks. So let's take a quick look here how students see the world. And I have some stats there, and I promised the source that I won't tell which Ivy League school this was, but I tell you it's not here, but it might be on the East Coast. And when you look at this, the question to the students was, how well do you believe the MBA is preparing you to lead in an AI-augmented workplace? And now let's assume an Ivy League student in one of the top East Coast schools has quite some self-confidence, right? They usually walk in and then they ask exceptionally well, and 3% of the students say yeah. Adequately, 60%, not bad. Poorly, 35%. I did the same questionnaire in my AI strategy class. Admittingly, it's a little smaller participation rate. This was slightly better, but not great either. So from a student perspective, it seems we are not yet preparing our students well enough that they all feel we are really prepared for the future. Now, what do we do about it? And the interesting, oh no, sorry, I forgot this. Margaret said something before, which I really liked. You have the opportunity to change the world. So we tell our students, you have the opportunity to change the world, but are we adequately preparing them? And I think there are some good opportunities. One is this here. And again, congratulations for everybody who came. There are different certificates. There are selected MBA classes, and I just put some up there, which I personally teach. And honestly, they are all now AI washed. But I think that's okay. Why do I think it's okay? Because really AI is in everything, and we have to be aware of this. So we also have to change our curricula accordingly. And I like this comment from Scott, who simply said, get the skills. Get out there, get the skills, which not always means it's through a formal program. And yesterday, Kelly, she said, look, very simple. Every week, you learn one new AI application. Every week, put it on your list. Try something new. It can be a little bit more aggressive and do it every day, but the point is we have to force ourselves there always to experiment personally. It's not just a question of the institution. And something we experiment right now with is a tool which is called breakout learning. It's kind of fascinating. Students sign up to this tool, discuss, 5 students, discuss a case. 10 minutes later, they get not even more text than this here. They get 5 pages of text. What did they contribute? It's kind of shocking when they read through this, because the AI picks up extremely well not only how long did they contribute, but did they purely repeat? Did they actually analyze? Or did they actually go further and were able to expand and enhance significantly the discussion? And I think we can say, well, we don't want this because, hey, maybe my teacher job goes away. Or we are saying, let's really take full advantages, embrace it, and work together with AI tools like those. Business side, overhyped, underhyped? Very interesting. When you read the newspaper in the last days, some investor says, look, this bubble is about to burst. This is crazy. I mean, this cannot go on like this. AI promise versus reality. 62% say it's overhyped. And MIT published a study in fall saying 95% of the projects that were started as experiments afterwards don't scale. So there is a challenge, obviously. Trying things works, but can we really scale them up that they create real value for our customers and willingness to pay? Or does it create real value in the sense of our cost structures to improve them significantly? And what I like there is Scott was very clear before. He said, well, it's obvious. There's an AI bubble coming up. And when you look at these numbers, they're very interesting too. So let's go back here for a moment. Go back? No. Ranking of S&P 500 companies by market cap. So in the market, there's obviously a lot of value. The question is it really supported? One company definitely has a positive cash flow. That's a company on top. NVIDIA makes all the money. But all the other companies, are they making money today? And it's just fascinating to see how the market caps went up. If you compare here only 3 years ago, and if you think about 2018, there was not one company valued at $1 trillion. Now we have several companies, and NVIDIA, this was from Monday, 4.5 trillion. And when you look at the S&P 500, without the top 10, they had a CAGR over those almost 3 years of 15%. So pretty good. You invested into S&P 500. Every year you had 15% return in the last 3 years. That's pretty nice. If you, without the top 10. Overall S&P 25%. But the interesting part, if you look at the top 10 of today and compare them, how much value increase they had. They're all together 45% every year. Every year. And if you invested in NVIDIA, that's the obvious one. You know, if after a year you sold half of your shares and got practically your money back, then you still had 2 more years getting 145%. So an enormous increase, and there's clearly a question mark, is there a bubble? Which brings me back to the way, how do we actually inside companies, how do we start using AI? And at Siemens, for example, we had really literally 1,000 flowers bloom. And we had a lot of shadow AI, which we talked about, people that tried things. And in the same MIT study you saw before, on page 5, they talk about something else. They talk about that only 40% of companies actually have their own ChatGPT or comparable private instance, but 90% of the employees are using LLMs. What does that mean? Well, that takes the company data and throw it into their private ChatGPT or comparables, which means they practically make company data available. There's no protection around this. This is when 1,000 flowers bloom. Now, what you need to do is have some guardrails, but at the same time, you don't want to stifle the creativity. So how do we do this? And their interesting one is, Patrick said it before. He said, well, there's a lot of gray use, as he called it. So then there's our friends from BCG. They did an analysis, and they came up with something completely different. AI won't give you a new sustainable competitive advantage. Does that make sense? Now we talked the whole day about AI, how powerful it is, and then one of these consultants, which was not here on stage today, they say, well, there is no sustainable competitive advantage. Does that make sense? Who agrees with this? Anybody? Why do you agree with that?
Because AI is so early on in general adoption and development that any update is going to rapidly proliferate, and a lot of firms are going to get the ability to do the same thing.
Okay, because it's a general purpose technology, and we will all have the same tools available. Now also, the gentleman from BCG, Reeves, goes a little further because he says that's true for whom? For the surviving companies. Well, that's a little bit a different message. Meaning, if you don't do it, somebody else will, and will maybe not generate a competitive advantage because it's a general purpose technology, but you might be at a disadvantage. And there's a third point, which I thought was really interesting. It, however, might amplify a competitive advantage you have today. And this competitive advantage in 90% of the cases is special access to data. I'll give you an example. I'm chair of a company where we are professional dummies. No kidding. Really dummies. Crash test dummies. So we're world market leader in crash test dummies. So we work with all the automotive companies in the world. We have very high market share, not for stage, but it's high. And so we have access to very interesting data that no individual customer of us has. If we use this data adequately, we can help with AI shortening the development process of our customers. Does that create value? Does it create value for an automotive company if they can deliver the car 5-6 weeks earlier? That every day creates a lot of value. Well, now it becomes a different story. Now we can enhance a competitive advantage because only we have the specific access to all this data cross-industry. And that's the interesting part. And as John said before, and that goes to the second point, folks that don't move fast enough, they will disappear. So, which I thought was very fascinating. Also looking at how do we do this then? And you have heard this before from Jim Clifton, right people on the bus in the right seat. What did he mean exactly by this? That when Umar spoke yesterday, and I will connect this, he talked about this T structure. Some of you were there. What did he mean? Well, there are two things that come together. Number one is you have to start with the domain knowledge. Why? Because this is how value is created. Domain knowledge means either it's somebody who works on the factory floor, it's somebody who is with the customer, it's somebody who deeply understands if I improve a process in a certain way, this creates actually a real improvement. So it's not the data analysts that might be very far away from the real application. And ideally, you combine the domain expert then with data analysts that can help you getting the data. And then, speaking from my old function, ideally, you do have some IT professionals that make available the data and the tool sets. It's a triangle, but it starts always with the domain expert because only there you have the opportunity to deeply understand how do you improve a process, how do you improve value for your customers. And this brings me back to the T structure that Umar talked yesterday about. The T structure, as he explained it, means on one hand you have some capabilities which are really cross domains, cross industries, ideally, even in a consulting company. But you have to be deep in something. If you're only on a thin level, you can be as broad as you want. You probably will be replaced very fast. If you do have some depth in some area, this is where you can create differentiation. Still, you have to have these broader capabilities. And this brings me to a simple, and John said it before perfectly. We measure ROI as we always did. What does that mean? And we translated this to say value cost. It doesn't matter if it's AI, if it's digitalization, if it's traditional manufacturing, design, or delivery. At the end of the day, either it creates value for your customers, and you translate this in willingness to pay, or you are able to improve significantly your processes that you create a competitive advantage because your cost position has an improvement compared to whom you're fighting against in the market. Always very simple, to my understanding. Keep it, does it create value, or does it help us from a cost driver perspective? And last but not least, I want to come to that point of governance. And I remember the first time we spoke, that's now 3 years ago, so regularly there's a directors meeting from the National Association of Corporate Directors, and a colleague of mine and some friends, we presented on a panel there about AI. And we had some similar framework like this one. What do you think was the reaction from directors? Any thoughts? What do you think when you asked a member of the board of directors 3 years ago about AI, what was the first thought that came to mind? It's risky. How do we control the risk? We might lose information. I might be exposed as a director to lawsuits because we have done something we shouldn't have been doing. And our answer was using Zuckerberg's comment, the biggest risk is not taking a risk. But of course, you want to have a measured risk. What does that mean? Number one, it has to fit with your strategy, something which we discussed here intensively. Second, capital allocation. How do you allocate your capital that it really makes sense? And risk is a topic, but it's not the only one. And last but not least, technology competence. And if you bring this back here, Diana said it very clear, skill development is critical, and skill development on all levels. It's bringing the new graduates into the company. It's reverse mentoring, making sure that your leadership team, including up to the board of directors, get upgraded on AI, ideally regularly. And last but not least, you have to decide what you want to invest in. And as Peter pointed out, if you believe that the best thing you can do with your capital is to create the own base AI model, well, that might be true for 3-4 companies in the world, but most probably not for the company that you represent. So thinking very carefully about how do you allocate capital. And with this, talking about education, we talked about how every one of us can go through a structured way, but at the same time, it's more what we individually do. And this is true for both sides, on the teaching side and on the learning side. Second, when you think about companies, careful with let 1,000 flowers bloom, but at the same time, how do you organize for constructive way of using AI, creating value for your company and for your customers? And then on the governance side, that you make sure that you're not just pushing the CEO, you have to do something in AI, but hopefully something which is expanding on the competitive advantage you already have. But what does it mean at the end? And let me finish here with a colleague of mine, Ravi Venkatesan, who said something very similar we had heard yesterday.
If you don't want to be replaced by a machine, well, don't act like one. Who's saying that? A Nobel Prize-winning physicist, Arno Penzias. And so we can never compete with machines on some things. The only thing we can do is become more and more and more uniquely human. Unfortunately, we are not taught that. It's sort of taken for granted. But I don't think any of us in school consciously learned to be what it is to be human. What is it? Well, there's some things which are particularly uniquely human, and I think it's going to be quite a while before AGI catches up to these qualities. One of them is empathy. What is empathy? It's the ability to understand another person's emotions and feelings and connect at the deepest level, right? And establish this bond of trust. How does that happen? It's not just through the spoken word. It's through facial expressions, body language. We are acutely sensitive to these things. So how do you learn to strengthen empathy? Another one is working with other people, collaboration, right? So as long as there are people around in the workplace and in society, I think we have a unique advantage when it comes to connecting and working with other people. Leadership, again, uniquely human quality. How do you inspire someone to voluntarily join hands with you and others to accomplish something? That is leadership. Again, uniquely human. Storytelling, a human quality not found in any other species, is the ability to imagine something and tell a story around it so that you get convinced. That's what we do in sales. So again, this is not going to be automated anytime soon. So these qualities are things that we need to now intentionally worry about and develop and strengthen.
So let's not be a better machine. Let's be most human. Let me finish off with 2 more comments. So one from Carla, who said, what matters most is your EQ. And my personal recommendation is pretty simple. Be lucky. Now, the good news is I have a formula for it. Interested? Okay. Well, it's not my formula. Seneca said it. Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. Investing in our preparation matters most because opportunity knocks every day, but sometimes we just let it go. And we shouldn't, but we have to be prepared for it. And with this, we close with somebody else here. We're all equal before the wave, but if we are prepared, we can take full advantage of it. With this, I see there are some questions. I've looked through this, and most of them I think I have addressed. So shall we go into questions or shall we go into drinks? Drinks? That's what I feared. So let's do the following. If there are really some burning questions, we would address them afterwards over a drink. And I would like to thank you for the invitation here. It's great to have had the opportunity to meet so interesting people, be it the participants or the other speakers. I think it's an amazing event that you created here. So thank you for this. And with this, have a wonderful evening. And looking forward to sharing some drinks with you.
Thank you.